We are met in ritual remembrance of Professor the Honourable Ralston Milton Nettleford, member of the Order of Merit, member of the Order of the Caribbean Community, Fellow of the Institute of Jamaica, Honorary Fellow of Oriel College, Oxford.
Young is my light and my salvation, so shall I be.
When I think of Professor Nettleford, do we start with the fact that a little black boy from Bunkers Hill, Trelawney, squeezed himself through the tiny portal of opportunity which opened to him in a time when such opportunities were virtually non-existent for persons of his class and color. Prof defied his odds and crafted his own destiny.
That name, Rex, and the wide currency of its usage are a mark of the man, since they connote a blend of affectionate informality with style and regality. For Rex, as you know, is the Latin word for king, and our Rex was a prince, let alone the Kumina king.
Too many of us looked in the mirror and didn't like what we saw and tried every conceivable means of changing it. Rex Nettleford helped to clean that mirror, to enable us to see ourselves for who we really are, and caused us to revalue ourselves.
Oh, what a lonely road we trod, stony the upward path we take to thee. Oh, what a narrow path we trod, winding the upward path we take to thee.
He was to play a key role in the establishment of certain other units of the university, which have fostered its practical intervention into the life of the wider community. We think, for instance, of the Trade Union Education Institute, which he headed, the Philip Sherlock Center for the Creative Arts, the Caribbean Institute of Media and Communication, the Mona School of Business, the Cultural Studies Program.
It is my card from the vampire of hell.
The music of Alleluias will lift with the gentle breeze blowing across the cane piece. As it rises to Bunkers Hill, to Accompong, to Blue Mountain Peak, and spreads over the Caribbean Sea. And as the spirits dance on the waves, we will hear under the singing the drums, the heartbeat of the people. Good night, sweet prince, and flights of angels sing thee to thy rest. Professor, Rex, we say to you, as you were fond of saying to us at leave-taking, bless you.
For some, nothing says Caribbean more than the cricket strokes of a Brian Lara. Yeah. For others, it's the infectious music of Bob Marley and the Wailers. The popular poetry of Louise Bennett gave us language and verse to call our own. Derek Walcott's creative use of words and meter won him a Nobel Prize.
It must make sense.
The sheer athletic brilliance of this man made him Dr. Usain Bolt, courtesy of UWI.
Smashing the world record! Unbelievable!
Holding pride of place among these Caribbean icons is the true Caribbean man, if ever there was one, Ralston Milton Nettleford. He was fired in the crucible of Mona, but his shadow looms large in the hollowed halls of St. Augustine in Trinidad and along the cobblestones of Cave Hill in Barbados. His notoriety grew because of his sheer academic brilliance and Caribbean cultural vision. Nettleford was born in 1933 in a Falmouth that boasted buildings like these, which were the domain of the remnants of the plantation aristocracy, while some peasants found solace as traders of ground provisions.
My generation, we have been very lucky. Yes, we were poor. But poverty wasn't a sin and shame and disgrace. You were poor but not deprived.
Yes.
I was really born in Falmouth, and that too was really a little seaport village at the time, if it still isn't. And then I was shunted off to the hinterland into Bunkers Hill. So I have had the opportunity of experiencing and living through the sense and sensibility of rural Jamaica. This is not because one is being, I'm a sociological entity, the sort of my mother who fathered me type of thing. But in truth and in fact, I was brought up in an extended family. I went to Falmouth Infant School and then was shipped off to the country, to Unity Government School, very important. And grew up with my grandmother.
Houses in the rural farming districts like Bunkers Hill boasted none of the facilities we take for granted today. Transportation was basic, and the only running water was the river which provided drinking water and a regular healing stream for Sunday morning baptisms.
I remember singing I'm Out to Build a New Jamaica with Christ Drive Pioneer every morning.
For young boys growing up in their 30s, life as a laborer on the plantation was as good as it got, but young Rex had other ideas. During his boyhood years, young Rex never stopped doing odd jobs to earn money to help support himself.
So I was accustomed to working and
early.
one understood, yes, from early, one understood that whatever you cannot achieve anything without working. You have to work at it. Then I went to Montego Bay, went to elementary school there for a year, and then won a scholarship to Cornwall College. It's an interesting story, actually. I built up a little bit of a reputation for being a little bright boy in school, and people always sort of respected that.
Rex's aim was to be the best in anything he did. And he took his work so seriously that the only pastime he really had was the dance. He organized the first dance thing in Montego Bay at the Strand Theatre while he was still at school.
In those days, of course, the scholarship was not a full scholarship. It was a scholarship for tuition. I recall when the Montego Bay Ice Company was established. Of course, lots of people, young people listening, even people of quality in those days didn't have refrigerators. They had ice boxes and they had to buy blocks of ice. So we wanted to sell the new factory to the clientele. And of course, the man who was, I think, secretary to that company said, he sat on the board of Cornwall College, he said he wanted a bright young man to go around and deliver the ice. So I was asked to do it. Well, of course I said. So I went with the handcart man, maybe the exercise book, and at 4:30 in the morning, before school, we would go around and deliver the ice in certain parts of Montego Bay. I have never felt that I was deprived or anything. I was getting on fine at school. School was wonderful, that's another thing. And Cornwall College, and I've often reminded my old school friends, do you remember what our motto was? Disque out discede, learn or leave. Or as we used to say, cram or scram. If you're black, you're ugly. The only time I ever thought that I was anything, I mean, that I could dare think of myself as good looking was when I went to Europe. Isn't that funny? That's quite. Probably they saw something exotic there. Let's put it this way. In the school I went, of course, which was, interestingly enough, a good, very good country school, really for small farmers' sons. But you did have a few high-brown and white fellas there who were snobs and who let you know, and they would curse you black and whatever. Then you got that experience too in your own yard. I mean, you know, they feel that people, the range of the color of skin, but that was sort of normal. You don't go to school, I mean, for 21 terms and come first in your class for 21 terms and think you're less than good. It really made a difference, yes. That made. And I also understood, I think it's my country upbringing now, growing up in a kind of sort of extended family. I understood that you really don't boast about from very early. Won a scholarship to Cornwall College and taught there for a brief year after higher schools. Then won a scholarship to University College of the West Indies, as it then was, and taught there for a year at UWI. By then it was still UCWI, and then I won a scholarship to Oxford.
P.J. Patterson, a former Prime Minister of Jamaica and a good friend of Nettleford, attended university at the same time.
Rex entered the university in 1953. By the time I entered, 1 year after, he was already becoming a legendary figure, known for his brilliance in scholarship, his intellectual curiosity, and his involvement in a range of academic disciplines beyond history, the subject in which he was specializing.
My interest all along was in ideas, ideas that move societies, how societies are formed, and I've always taken a very personal interest, deep interest in Jamaican Caribbean cultural phenomena.
Rex was a prince. He was a prince in his bearing. He was a prince in his courtesy and his enthusiasm and his grace and his wit. He was a brilliant person. He also, had a great sense of humor. And he was evidently a naturally born leader since he formed the dance companies.
The one who may be called his chief mentor and promoter was Philip Sherlock.
He was really a moving spirit who understood that questions of identity, of people understanding who they are, and what they know, and what they ought to know in terms of their own historical experience and existential reality. And one learned a great deal from Philip Sherlock on that score, and he was definitely a moving spirit which kept the university grounded in its roots now, and grow from its roots, as against others who were there who definitely saw it as an outpost of empire. And you know, I like to feel that I'm a beneficiary of the Sherlock vision.
On campus, his blend of academics, sports and the arts prepared him for the Rhodes Scholarship, which he won in 1956.
At Oxford, I did postgraduate work in politics. My time at Oxford, my time at UWI, and in Oxford, I did co-direct or choreograph every single, between 57 and 59, every single major production there.
You did?
Oh yes. Oh. So you see, that prepared me for the NDTC, because the dedication that I found among those students was tremendous, and the discipline, the self-discipline, all of these things I felt were so important. I didn't get self-discipline from Oxford, I got it from my grandmother.
He was hugely affirming as a figure, because here was this man who was a Jamaican Rhodes Scholar and the Vice Chancellor of UE, but he was also a professional dancer. He was a serious artist. And I didn't have many models of Rhodes Scholars in the Caribbean who are artists.
After Oxford, UWI became his pedagogic fountain, where he gave students a roadmap to successful careers. The classroom was his canvas, where he used all the Caribbean rainbow magic on his palette to bring color to his lessons, titillating young minds that were eager to feed off his own brilliant intellect.
Professor Nettleford lectured widely, not just here in the academic institution and locally, but he lectured in forums all across the globe. His messages were consistent. He felt it was very important to understand who we are as a people. He underlined the importance that independence and emancipation had for us as a people. In creating a sense of freedom, not just for those who were enslaved, but for the enslavers as well. He was criticized widely for spending too much time focused on slavery. He was unrepentant. He pointed out that in the act of driving, we use not only the headlights, but we also use the rear view mirror.
Today, Rastafari is accepted as a key element of the Caribbean mosaic, thanks in large part to the research and analysis that Nettleford did as one member of a team chosen by Premier Norman Manley in 1961 to visit Ethiopia. The seminal research helped to validate the relevance of that much maligned and marginalized nascent movement.
Jah! Rastafari.
Jah is my health and my strength. So whom shall I fear? He's a shield upon my right and my left hand. So whom shall I be afraid? Jah is my king.
Dr. Sonia Nair is the first winner of the Rex Nettleford Fellowship in Cultural Studies, established by the Rhodes Trust in honor of Professor Nettleford.
Professor Nettleford's establishment of the Cultural Studies Initiative and the evolving teaching program, out of which students have graduated from the MPhil in Cultural Studies and the PhD in Cultural Studies. These have been very significant, because what we've been able to do and I speak not only as a student but as someone teaching in the program, we've been able to document so much of Jamaica's cultural heritage, what we talk about now as intangible heritage, Caribbean popular culture, music, dance, Rastafari, Jamaican fashion.
With the university, where I've always been, I was resident tutor, served for a short time in Trinidad, interestingly enough, as acting resident tutor, then resident tutor for Jamaica, and a staff tutor in political education, serving the entire region that the university serves. And then I became Director of Studies in the Trade Union Education Institute. And then I became Deputy Director of the Department of Extramural Studies, and then Director of the department, which was changed, Professor of Continuing Studies, and then became a Pro-Vice Chancellor.
I see Rex firstly as a model of intellectual academic excellence. I see him secondly, Rex, in whose hands the levers of leadership and administration. And evidently, I see Rex as a powerful institution builder.
Many people who wondered, who had serious doubts about my intellectual legitimacy, have come around to that. The thing is that my concentration on meaning, that the intellectual's job is to find meaning for all sorts of disparate things which are about the place, and that we must transform chaos into organized chaos.
He had a way of seeking out the underdog. In fact, I used to tell him that he was a Bajan in that regard. He would seek out the underdog and find a way of lifting them up and giving them that chance. And maybe he may have felt that his was a life where a chance was given, and it was therefore his to give back. He never said it to me, but that was how I interpreted it.
Professor Nettleford was very firm on the notion that to be Caribbean was to be international. He saw the Caribbean as the center of Western modernity. In the Caribbean, he said, all of the civilizations of the world came together to create a distinctive Caribbean culture. And therefore, the Caribbean, from its modern inception, was indeed an international space. And therefore, to function as a Caribbean scholar, as a Caribbean activist, was to participate on the international stage and the international arena. And that is where he performed to great credit to the Caribbean peoples. In fact, he became one of the principal voices of Caribbean culture on that global stage.
In 1962, he collaborated with Eddie Thomas to form Jamaica's National Dance Theatre Company.
And 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, and pound. 1, 2, and pound. Everybody.
He was quick off the block when we got independence by coming to me within a matter of a very short time to say that they had put together a dance theatre company, and he wanted it to be a company that could perform on an annual basis and so on, and be able to have the ability to do so at a national level. And I gave it my blessing.
His body was like a bamboo in the wind, contorting effortlessly as he created the embryo of new dances for the NDTC, which was still in the cocoon. Rex always said the process was as important as the destination. Each dance had its genesis in the catacombs of his mind, oftentimes triggered by a piece of music or a movement borrowed from his childhood folk memory. The music was his energy, and the dancers were his moist clay that he molded into moving art. Sitting here in limbo. For his choreography, Nettleford drew inspiration from the music of the best Caribbean composers, but none more so than Jimmy Cliff, who got his own tribute from the choreographer.
So when Professor Nettleford did a tribute to me, it was deeply appreciated for the simple fact that I knew that he knew. Many rivers to cross, but I can't seem to find my way over. Wandering I am lost as I travel along the white cliffs of Dover.
His love of culture, I believe, in the case of Rex, was a love of something that gave him self-expression. Because in dance in particular, he danced himself. He wasn't just somebody who sat behind in the back room. He was a performer, and a very good performer, and a very good dancer. And out of the dance he expressed himself. And you see from many of the items that they did in their dance repertoire.
Imagine if all the geniuses we have produced out of the so-called inner city and rural Jamaica who have produced the great music, if they were shooting bullets rather than words and notes. Let us think of that. That's what I mean by and I would like to feel that I'm not just an intellectual writing things with lots of other footnotes of other people's work, but a creative intellect.
Everything about Professor's work was to do with the Caribbean. He often told us that he represented the Caribbean. It was not just about Jamaica. And we share the Caribbean, we share such a common history that it was quite easy for him to be able to represent through his, not only in terms of his academic work, but in terms of his, the practical side of his academic work, which was the National Dance Theatre Company.
In the midst of his busy schedule, Nettleford always made time to give public service to his country, Jamaica. Political leaders always sought Nettleford's objective analysis and reasoned counsel.
For Rex, Norman Manley was a political icon. And it was Norman Manley who first put him to work for the government when he engaged him in a study of the Rastafarian movement. That was followed in later years by the government led by Sir Alexander Bustamante. Rex was always very, very committed, largely because of his background, to the cause of the workers. And therefore he worked under Sir Alexander Bustamante and subsequently with Hugh Shearer in several areas. When Michael Manley became the Prime Minister, he was formally engaged as cultural ambassador, and that was followed and pursued by Edward Seaga when he became the Prime Minister.
Whatever politics Rex had, he made sure to keep it out of his work.
For service above self to his people and his country, in 1975, Nettleford was awarded the Order of Merit, Jamaica's highest non-political national honor. No doubt, the dance was his heart, but the university was his brain.
Rex helped a lot of young people, and he gave a lot of help, but there was almost secrecy. He didn't want anybody to know who he helped and why he helped.
His unmatched eloquence ran parallel to his sartorial elegance, which always paid homage to his African roots. While his feet danced, his fingers were busy writing several books. Academia and libraries around the world are much the richer for the many volumes of publications written or edited by the professor. For the professor, education must always give students skills for life, like those they received at the Trade Union Education Institute, where he became the first director in 1963.
If you see the trade union member as a worker, a laborer from the plantation, you are dealing with a total human being. The thing of improved wages and better conditions of work are just one aspect. In fact, it's just the scaffolding on which to climb to the edifice of freedom, of dignity and whatever. And in fact, the trade unions are more than just, throughout the region, they were essentially instruments of social change.
In as much as Professor Nettleford was not a trade unionist in the traditional sense, that he led a trade union organization, I would want to say that among the pantheons of trade union leaders, he would rank pari passu head and shoulder with others, because he certainly has brought the intellectual dimension to the working class struggle to organize labor in a way that has had an impact up on the social, economic, political and cultural development of the Caribbean region.
Professor Nettleford was visionary with respect to outreach services to the university. Under his leadership, the schools of continuing studies flourished and expanded their services. Also, he was instrumental in establishing the research units that formed part of the schools. These now are part of the Consortium for Social Development and Research in the Open Campus.
His academic journey came full circle in 1998 when he received the crowning glory as the first UWI graduate to be installed as its Vice Chancellor.
It is a celebration of Rex Nettleford's quite monumental contributions. I, Rex Nettleford.
I, Rex Nettleford.
Do solemnly declare.
Do solemnly declare.
That I will faithfully and to the best of my ability.
That I shall faithfully and to the best of my ability.
Discharge all the duties and obligations.
Discharge all the duties and obligations.
Pertaining to the office of the Vice Chancellor of the University of the West Indies.
Pertaining to the office of the Vice Chancellor of the University of the West Indies.
According to the Charter, statutes, ordinances and regulations.
According to the statutes, orders and regulations.
And will promote the well-being of the university and that of its members.
And will promote the well-being of the university and that of its members.
So far as in me lies.
So far as in me lies. This is indeed a time to ask questions of what is or should be expected of us.
Behold, the only thing greater than yourself.
Professor Nettleford had so many things wrapped up into this experience called dance. So while I would say how he thought of dance, it wasn't just dance. It was the fact that dance represented our voice, you know, not just in Jamaica, but the Caribbean, the diaspora. We should also try to continue this message and use of movement through our choreography so that we can identify with being Jamaican, identify with being Caribbean, identify with being very strong Black people who are intelligent, because that was something that Professor Nettleford was also insistent on, the fact that we show this intellect through dance.
Well, Professor would always say that we can be sprinters, of course. You know, Jamaica has a lot of sprinters, but we must be long-distance runners. Very important, because it is very easy to start something, but always a challenge to sustain it.
His dancers were always under his watchful eye while he trained others to succeed him to keep the flame burning.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Come now, let me see.
Living in the city never made him forget his primal religious background. It was Rex who took folk dances and religious customs from the bush and country roads to celebrate them with reverence in the proscenium march of the theatre.
Prof was able to ambush Jamaican society by bringing to the forefront a lot of their ancestral memories in terms of on the concert stage, the kumina, the gerabente, all our traditional rituals.
In 1991, Nettleford was made a Fellow of the Institute of Jamaica, one of only 4 persons given this prestigious honor in more than 100 years. Professor Nettleford's achievement in academia and the arts were acknowledged by many universities across the globe that awarded him 18 honorary doctorates, medals and fellowships. Arguably, one of his proudest moments came in 2005 when he was selected as one of the 4 most outstanding Rhodes Scholars out of the 4,000 living graduates of Oxford University.
Where ki cum tam varias artes tam localento, succesu exercias ut exemplos cicerarissimo quam multiplex sit hominum natura, doctoris in jure civili honoris causa.
We know that he was a member of the UNESCO High Command for many, many years. And he, in fact, helped to frame UNESCO's vision to respect and integrate Caribbean civilization into their programs. And whether he was in Moscow or London or New York, he had the same message for everyone. And that message we had heard in Kingston and Bridgetown and Port of Spain. He spoke a global language, and he spoke the same language wherever he journeyed. And that language was that Caribbean civilization has tremendous contributions to make to the world. It is a part of modernity, and the best is yet to come.
He was always an actor on the world stage, making a fundamental contribution to international organizations working in the areas of human rights and history education. He had the distinction of being one of the 5 persons worldwide who were appointed as members of the Working Group of Experts on People of African Descent established by the United Nations Human Rights Council in 2002.
In 2008, CARICOM celebrated his contribution to the region by giving him the prestigious Order of the Caribbean Community. UWI followed closely behind.
I think it is fitting that this second gold medal be given to Vice Chancellor Emeritus Professor Rex Nettleford. I believe that Rex Nettleford is in every way, for the West Indies, our Renaissance man.
It gives me exquisite pleasure to be able to present you with the Chancellor's Medal, duly inscribed, and hand you the scroll that accompanies it. My sincere congratulations.
I have never really achieved anything on my own. Everything that I've done has been rooted in collaborative work. And I don't particularly feel it's any special credit to me or that I'm greatly selfless. Nothing like that. It's just how I was socialized, that in fact the world turned on collaborative action.
Think I walk like a champion, act like a champion. What a piece of body can tell me where you get it from. Not find your entrance, ram pa pa pam pam. Can't let me in me everything, but no man at all. You no look for them way. You look good enough against no matter what I can say. Put on your clothes is like a display. Man I swear on a steer about night and day. Would you be my only and
If I had stayed in slavery, I wouldn't be what I am now. We couldn't even be sitting here. I would probably be the local deacon. And people will call it different things, and we have used the race class correlation. So you can be as black as pot. If you speak nicely and have money, they will probably forget the melanin. I like the idea of coming from rather than staying at the roots. Yes. I've always said that if you stay at the roots, you rot. Yes. And I'm not interested in staying at the roots. Not interested in rotting. I'm very interested in trees that must have roots. Definitely. But I'm interested in the growth and the bearing of fruits and the releasing of the fruits so that they in turn can in fact generate more of the trees and so on.
His constant distillation in search of the essence of our indigenous culture might be called artistic petulance by those who never accepted or quite understood the measure of this extraordinary man whose roots are deeply embedded in the soul of Caribbean nation-states and their peoples.
I come back to the thing of Caribbean cultural social phenomena being capable of explanation and theory, and that if we really want to get at the heart of a society like this, we have got to understand the deep social forces which mobilize, motivate people to action.
Rex does not need a statue to remind us of his invaluable contribution to education and culture as a pan-Caribbean catalyst whose legacy continues to touch the lives of the ordinary man. But how does he want to be remembered?
Best remembered? Just that I was an ordinary man, O.M., who lived on this planet and did a little to make a difference by helping people.
Jamaicans may claim Rex Nettleford by birth, but the Caribbean claims his spirit and his legacy.
A man of the greatest versatility, effective in action, outstanding in erudition, and most supple on the dance.
Ralston Milton Nettleford, King Rex.
Jah is my health and my strength. So